Hello, how's everyone doing there? So, just getting myself organized for the live stream today. And I'm going to share my screen, talk about some stuff. That's what I'll be able to show you guys. Cool. Just give us some tabs here. So what I'm going to be talking about today is going off-grid on a budget and where's the best way to save money. Now, I was actually talking to a customer yesterday about this stuff. And if you're over in the Off-Grid Tribe, on our basically private community over there, so I give that a bit of a plug. The Off-Grid Tribe, we've actually got a podcast, which is free. We can actually join the podcast, and you can actually, what's really amazing about the podcast is you can actually engage with the speakers. That's something that we're basically really doing different compared to other podcasts over there. If there's someone you want us to talk to or a topic you want us to have a chat with someone about, just post it over in the Off-Grid Tribe podcast, and you'll be able to have a conversation over there. We'll be able to find the speaker. If we've got someone coming up, let you know that someone coming about that topic on the Off-Grid podcast. But the idea with that there is you can talk to ask questions to the guests, and they'll respond to you on the podcast. And then if you want to actually have a conversation with the guests themselves within our private community, which we charge $150 a year or something like that for, and we do some really cool stuff within the community to give back to the community and everyone's involved in the community. With that there, we actually run live streams privately in there with the guests. So you'll actually be able to come on and actually you'll be able to jump in and actually talk to the guests yourself and ask the question directly. The way our private community works is, it's like a Zoom call. If you think about it like that, you can jump on, have conversations and talk to people in there, which is great. So it's pretty exciting. I'll just share my screen. Actually found that. Just put this over here. Okay. So here you go. So this is the Off-Grid Tribe podcast. We can come over here and you can actually ask questions from someone that we've got on the podcast, and you can tag the guest, I suppose, the best way to talk to them. And those guests on there will answer your questions, have a conversation, and go from there. And then with our community, this is our private community. So this is actually a paid group where you can come over here, and which I'm going to show you something this morning regarding going from the budget. So it works very similar like a Facebook group, but we're trying to be a bit more organized with the topics. So, someone comes in and asks the same question over and over again, about Victron or batteries, composting toilets and things like that. We actually attempt to put it all into one article, one topic, so everyone can go and have that conversation. It's easy to find. So you check out Yarn system here. Oh no, his batteries are not there. What I want to show you, it's a good thing. So going off grid on a budget, and this is a common question and a lot of people get asked, and we've actually got someone coming on the channel to do a podcast with us in the next few weeks. His name's Grant, and now Grant's amazing. He's, I call him an old bloke, but no, he's in his 60s, and he basically took his whole grid, him and his wife, they basically physically built their whole house, their whole system, did everything themselves over 5 years ago now. And what's really exciting about what Grant's doing, Grant and Audrey, is they've actually just sold their property and they're going to be moving on. They're going to be doing it all again, which is very exciting. And what him and I actually talked about, and one thing we've been discussing, is how to go off grid and do it and save money, and how I would recommend do it. And the reason that this is really important, and I suppose with Grant's situation, is when we designed Grant's system for the first time, with battery technology back then, it was one of those things that batteries were the most expensive part of the system, and you had to buy all your battery capacity up front. It was pretty simple. Everything you purchased had to be all up front, put it in. Then over time, you couldn't really add to your you can't add to your battery capacity. It's not the best thing to do. Now, back in 2017, lithium really hit the market in the off-grid scene. It's probably a bit before that, but really in 2017, there was a lot of players in the market that were really marketing, advertising their products. A few Australian made ones hit the market. And with lithium, what it actually changed with going off-grid is you could actually put really small amount of batteries in, so you could save your money putting batteries in. And the reason I'm going to show you this photo is because it's really actually easy to add batteries. Now, we never did this system. This was actually done by an installer who actually now lives over in Western Australia called James, supplied this customer. What's really good about these rack-mounted battery technology and the way we do our systems as well. So James has actually filled the cabinet here. The way we've done it in the past for our customers. So, this is it looks like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's got 6 different batteries in there. We normally use the 8 battery cabinet. We normally use the 8 battery cabinet and we wire it all up ready for 8 batteries. And some customers only put 1, 2, maybe 3 batteries in their system. And we've already wired it up. As you can see in the front of it here, so make this image a bit bigger. They've actually just they're called Shore-Lock connectors, and it's just really easy just to actually add and click the battery in. So if you want to upgrade your battery in the future, you just grab it, slide it in, click it in, and you're done. So that really is a big game changer when it comes to going off grid, because you don't have to buy all your batteries up front. My advice is always, when you're going off grid, is to put as many panels up as possible, fill your roof, and same with grid connected, same thing, fill the roof, completely fill the roof. The more panels you put up, the better it's going to be. Go Victron, buy once, cry once. I'd like to know more about what you mean by that, Margarita. Let us know more about that with Victron. So I'm a big fan of Victron. I'll finish my point there. We'll get into that. So with putting as many panels as you can up, the really good thing with panels is, especially here in Australia, there's a lot of really good quality secondhand panels on the market. So you can actually use secondhand panels, which is great. And that's what we're going to be looking at doing with Grant's system moving forward, his next system. We're going to be looking at using the secondhand panels in his system to reduce the cost of it all. And a lot of panels, and the reason there is a lot of secondhand panels on the market is, I've done this myself before. I've had a customer saying, hey, Mike, we're going to put this system up. You design it for that customer. They then sell the property. The new owners call you up and say, hey, we want to remove this system. And, it might be 2 or 3 years later and they want to get rid of it, put a bigger system up, and because they need more power, and sometimes you just don't have the space. So because panels get so much more efficient, you remove the old ones, put the new ones up and things like that. So that happens a lot in Australia. And there's a really good, in Australia, we used to have like Hyundai, TIAC, Sharp made a lot of solar panels. A lot of these big companies, BP Solar made solar and that sort of stuff. There's a lot of really good old products sitting around, floating around the marketplace that you can actually get secondhand and reuse those panels. So that's a really good thing. And panels, if you're doing it yourself, it doesn't really matter. But one of the most expensive things when adding to a solar system is panels if you're paying a professional, because they just take all day. And it's one of those things as well that when they lay all the racking and rail down, and, the real difference between a 6 kilowatt of panels, putting 6 kilowatt of panels up compared to 10 kilowatts of panels these days, it can be 4 to 6 panels. It's actually really not a huge amount. To add 4 to 6 panels on a day when they're doing the system, it's not a huge amount of work. To come back and add an extra 4 to 6 panels to take that 6 to a 10 kilowatt system will cost you the same money you spent for paying them for one day again. So you're better off putting as many panels up as possible the first time when you're going off grid designing, if you actually are paying professionals to do it and make it happen. So I'd highly recommend with that there. Now, the one thing I'd make sure when you are putting and designing on a budget, you want to put your inverter up. We actually go back to this one here of Jan's system. It's a better photo in our community here. So this is Jan. He shared his system. So Jan's actually from the Caribbean. I actually had a talk with someone yesterday over there in the Dominican Republic. Basically, we're getting involved in helping design a community project over there in the Dominican Republic, which is pretty damn exciting. So Jan's actually over there. He's in a little island not far from the Dominican Republic. This is his system he shared. So Yarn's actually professional. So if you actually are anywhere over there and looking for someone to help with your Victron installs, Yarn's based over there. We'll put his link into his company description below. So what I'd recommend is the best thing to put up is your inverter. Now, with inverters, especially with the Victron gear, and most off-grid inverters are the same. With the Victron inverters off-grid, if you have a 5 kVA inverter and in the future you want to upgrade it, you just do require to buy the same inverter. Now, it's really easy to add. There is a little bit of complications with wiring stuff. That from a program point of view, we do have a Victron course which we teach people how to program and do this sort of stuff through our community. That's what our off-grid tribe community is all about. We have a lot of programs and courses in there where you can learn to do this stuff yourself. So one thing I sort of recommend is put the best inverter up as possible from the start, because it can be complicated. If you're paying a professional to come back and do it in the future, it's pretty easy to be able to add that extra inverter in. And if not, you're better off just buying a bigger inverter. So instead of a 5, you've got the budget, push up to a 10 straight away. But the reality is you can always add this. And I suppose plan in the future. One of the biggest things I see the complications if you don't plan to go, right, I'm going to go with a 5 kVA inverter, leave enough space and how it's all wide and configured here. I'm pretty confident on Yarn's wall here. He could probably add another inverter there. It'd be really easy to extend the conduit and the cabling and that sort of stuff and make all that work. Would be really easy to make that happen by the looks of things here. But what I see, if people shove the inverter in a corner, don't leave any space, and then you want to add in the future, that can be really complicated. So I'd put the biggest inverter up as possible in that situation with that there. So that there, many panels, maximize the panels, put an inverter up. You can always add an extra one in the future. And then that allows you to save a lot of cost when it comes to batteries. And, the reason I like to do that way, because what it actually teaches you off-grid, if you have a small amount of batteries and you have a lot of solar, it really teaches you to work with nature. And when the sun's out, get out and do as much things as possible. You might be in a situation where you can't do that, just the way with your lifestyle is. So, but you can always keep adding batteries in the future. And a lot of the systems we've designed over the years, we put the panels up, we install the panels, put all the systems in the wall inside for the customers, do all that. One battery in there, because a lot of people might buy it as a weekender and they're looking to go there. You just put one battery in there, and then over time, you can just buy another battery and save this cabinet here as example. We just started with one battery. Like I said, the way I've always suggested to installers do it, they wire the cabinet for 8 batteries. And they just keep adding in there, which is great. Adding to grow it in there. So, and they just really plug and play. So you as the end user can just grab it, plug it in, and you're good to go. So, which is really, really cool. So I've got a few comments over here when I go through and, so with Victron, buy crap, buy twice. We've got a few comments here with that sort of stuff there. Look, my experience personally with Victron, and I'm going to use Victron and Selectronics here in Australia as an example. Now, the Victron inverter chargers I've had over the years have been very, very reliable, and we've had less than a handful. We've done thousands of off-grid projects. We've done over 1,000 completed off-grid projects. We've sold a lot of Victron inverters and chargers just by themselves through what we've done as a business over the years. Now, what I've seen, what I've seen in my experience has been a lot of the failures I've seen over the years is bad installation from installers. Now, when I had my business here in Australia, when we were doing installs and I was supplying a lot of installers, I would see with the guys that see our warranty claims go up, and I'd sort of ask questions, go, hang on, we haven't had a warranty claim for 2 years. Why have we got so many more warranty claims? And they say, oh, we got this new installer working with us and, things keep going wrong. It must be a bad batch. And I started really looking into it and asking the installers questions. And it was actually the installers just installing them really poorly and blowing things up. And I remember a customer once, I just use this as an example. I remember this installer that blew up so many things, kept breaking stuff, and he literally just blamed it on the Victron gear. It's like, Victron's crap, it's a terrible product. I spoke with a customer, and the customer, I love this installer. He's really good at what he'd done, just really bad, run with the products and that he installed, and he actually installed them incorrectly but blamed the product. So I see a lot of that going on over the years, and that's, to me, from my opinion of watching, the Victron products are really good. And I'll compare Victron to Selectronics. Now, if you look at the Victron inverter chargers, they're amazing. Selectronics have a really good, reliable inverter chargers. Now, Selectronics in Australia only sell inverter chargers. That's all they do. They don't do all the other bells and whistles that Victron do. Even Selectronics themselves, they're monitoring. And, when I go back to a grid-connected side of life, all the failures I've seen over the years, it's not mainly inverters, it's more the monitoring and the little computers that are used to monitor all this stuff that have the failures. Now, go back, I reckon probably 2017, 2018 was when really a lot of companies started installing monitoring devices and things like that. When they'd really start installing monitoring devices and things like that. And that's when I saw a lot of the failures happen on the monitoring devices. Now, yeah, Victron's had a couple of bad runs with a few suppliers on their monitoring devices, but as an installer and as a business over the years, now I don't do installs anymore, hung that up a long time ago. I've just run businesses watching this stuff. Victron's been amazing with their warranties, and if anything that's been their problem or their fault or a bad batch of something, they've been amazing with fixing their warranties. And honestly, most of it's been bad installations from installers over the years. So now we've got a few questions here. Okay, so would you go for a Servo GX? Would you go for a Servo GX? 100%. Every system I recommend. Victron's just released a new Ekrano. I've found the Servo GXs to probably be the most reliable monitoring device they've actually had. I know Victron did have a few issues with their color screens, the remote control color screens. They had a bit of a failure rate. But the Servos, we've had very few over the years with Servos. So 100% with Servos, put those in. They just released into Ekrano, which is a screen and the Servo all in one. It's a new model one. So I've got a sample coming very soon. They've just been released. Be able to check those out and see what they're like. Now, would I go for a smart shunt? Now, a smart shunt, I recommend anyone that's putting a system in 100% put a smart shunt in. So a smart shunt's like a battery monitor, and Pylontech as an example about the Pylontech batteries. Now, with the Pylontech batteries, they're a managed battery. You plug it into the Victron, and it'll show all the battery monitoring, everything actually on the screen. Actually, plug it in, and they're the battery management system. The reason I actually prefer using a smart shunt in those situations is because the smart shunt's like a third-party monitoring device. I've had situations before where Pylontech have said, hey, this battery's been discharged this month. I'm like, well, hang on, the Victron says this. SMA is an example of Sunny Islands. They recommend using a Victron shunt because the Victron shunt will give more accurate readings than their internal shunts on their Sunny Island devices. But having that external device with the Victron shunts will give you that third-party piece of insurance. If your battery manufacturer is trying to pull the wool over your eyes and say, oh, no, we've checked everything and this and that, and we think you've abused the battery, having a Victron shunt in there and actually having it connected to the internet where all the data is recorded, two things is going to happen. If you've abused your battery, well, they're going to get to see it because you've got the same proof of what they've got. But if you haven't abused your battery, you've looked after it, you're going to see that the Victron shunt's going to help you protect you when it comes to those situations about looking after you when you're trying to get your warranties and stuff claimed. So I highly recommend everyone install a shunt. So Quattros versus Quattros versus Multipluses. Look, there's a couple of different things I've done over the years with Quattros versus Multipluses, and it would really depend on the situation. The difference between a Quattro and a Multiplus, on a Multiplus inverter, they have one input, so you can put the grid or a generator. And all Victrons have two outputs, or the Multiplus and Quattros. So with the Quattro has two inputs. So if you think about the Quattro, what you can actually do is use it for having a generator on one side and a grid. So as an example, in more commercial situations, I would highly recommend always use a Quattro, because if the grid's available, you can have one grid input in there, and then you can always have a generator in as a backup. So you get to use both of them. And if it's just an off-grid situation, you're trying to design for off-grid and you don't really need, there's no grid there, you can actually have 2 generator inputs. One thing I have seen once in my whole entire life, I've seen this happen. A installer, when we looked into it, when they were tightening up the nuts, they'd snapped off the bolts into the inverter, and that's what was causing all the issues, and made the issue with the Victron, the ingoing circuit on input 1 for the off-grid situation. And that for me was actually really easy fix when I got there to check it out for the customer and sort of figure out what it was. So I just moved from input 1 to input 2, done. And then the customer had the generator instantly back, where if it wasn't that situation, had to rip the inverter off, send it back, get a new board put in there and things like that. So the other thing with a multi-plus versus a Quattro, like this is more for grid connected customers. So if you've got the grid available and you want that reliability, what's amazing with the Victron here is you can actually use a multi-plus and a changeover switch. One of our, from last week, I'll bring up our YouTube channel. Richard, I think his name was last week, was actually talking about this on our last week's live stream with changeover switches. So how it works in a multi-plus, if you've got the grid available, what you can actually do is have a changeover switch. So with that changeover switch, what you do is if you have it wired into your generator, so if the grid fails and you're in a blackout, you can actually just change it up. Then you have the generator come in and charge your batteries and back up your house for that reliability, and you don't need to spend the extra money on the multi-pluses. But that really means it's a manual situation for you to walk out and get involved and do it. So, it's not really automated. And that's why I say if you're going to go down a commercial, you're someone that, or your client or customer, whoever you're dealing with, wants more of an automated system, wants everything to be automated. That's where I'd recommend, just going to find this. That's where I'd highly recommend having a Quattro, because you can put 2 inputs in and make it all automated, which is pretty exciting. So, cool. Is anyone any other questions before I jump on to the next topic? Yes, 2 AC inputs. Cool. I think that's answered everything about the Victron stuff. So what I want to talk about is a program here I use. We're looking at more, we're working with a lot of clients at the moment where we're buying and looking for off-grid rural properties, and not even just rurally. We actually are looking for projects in town and things like that. Let's bring this one up here. And I'll show you this program that I've been using to do that. Share a screen, that one there. Now, sometimes this program gets a bit laggy when we're doing a live stream. We're using the program with it all. So let's see how it goes here. So one of the biggest things I see with a lot of people when they buy an off-grid property, a lot of people don't take the whole thing into consideration when going off-grid, is how their lifestyle is really going to look when you're living off-grid. Now, I'll give you an example. And there's some people over the years I've met that have, they've got this dream about going off-grid and being completely debt-free. So they go and buy a block of land because they look for land around areas where they can afford to buy for the money that they've got. So, they might have a couple of $100,000 and they start looking around areas where they can buy stuff for a couple of $100,000. And so what happens then at buying these properties, and they're too far out of town, really big driveways, they don't realize how much extra cost it's going to cost to get people to come out and do work and stuff like that on their property. So all these little things that people don't consider the real lifestyle living off grid. Now, for me, I actually live in the middle of town, and I'll do some more live videos at my place. If you guys would like to see that, post in the comments below and let me know and show you my place. I live in the middle of 7 acres in the middle of town. I can walk to a shopping center, which is less than 5 minutes. The hospital is like 300 meters down the road from my house. And you would swear you're in the bush when you're sitting in my house. And we have about 30 minutes a day you can hear cars. But besides that, we're a really private household in the middle of town. So things for me, and moving out and going off grid is something that I am considering on doing, and what I want to do. So we do want to move out of town, and we do want a land and build a community is what we sort of want to do. So, and with that community, another thing people don't consider is when you're off grid is who looks after your chickens, who looks after your animals, who maintains everything when you want to go away for a holiday. So people end up going off grid and feel like they're married to these properties and they can't go away and have a holiday. So this is some tools that I look at. And this property here, I'll tell you how it works. So this is 40 minutes from a main town. So 40 minutes from Port Macquarie. So within 40 minutes, you can jump in your car and bang, you can be in a major city, which is great, which has everything you want. So there's major hospitals, all that sort of stuff, all the major services that you ever want. So you're 40 minutes. So it's something for me when I'm looking to go off grid and build a property is like, right, how far are we from major town services? Another thing for us, we've got kids, and another thing where a lot of people don't consider is what is it like to live out here all by yourself? And that's why I think communities and building communities could be really beneficial. I know there's a couple of communities I've been involved in over the years that was one thing they want more from their community members is have more children or get more community members on the community that have kids so the kids can be more homeschooled and things like that. A lot of my mates I went to school with would spend hours on the bus each morning traveling in and out. It's just a waste of your life, I suppose, the way I think about it. So is there a really good little country school around the area or can the kids be homeschooled? I know it's a big thing and very popular in the States. A lot more people in Australia here doing it. But this tool that we use for buying, so if you find a good area that you're looking at and what you want to do, what's really good about this tool, this is a community project that we're working on. We're coming up the next couple of months. This tool that I use. So we can actually look at the contours of the land. Now, I looked at a couple of blocks of land the other day, and here we go. So now there were two bits of land, and one of them, a lot of people think, oh, I want flat land. The problem with flat land is you can't use gravity or use things in your advantage when you're working with water. And so it's one thing that I look at when I'm looking at a property. And the reason I love this tool, and it can save you money when you're looking for a property because you don't actually have to drive out and look at the land. So as an example here, and I love, and I suppose I finished on those two properties. So one property had a really nice, bit of a flat bit up the top, nice little hill went down, nice gradient. The other property was completely dead flat. I had a tiny little rise in it. And I was like, well, how are we going to get to move water around the property? How do we catch water? That sort of stuff. So, and even the problem with that property, and how we could have caught water and done it with it, it actually was the flat land of, it's at the end of a cul-de-sac. So all the houses and everything run down to this one area and in there. So you could probably catch a lot of water off the street and that sort of stuff. And you could have made it work. But you're relying on all the water going through your neighbors' properties and things like that. So as an example of this property here, this property is quite flat. But the good thing about it, and you can't really see it in the contour map, unless I can jump over this one here, but you got all this bush, and so red is higher, blue is lower. So going from top to bottom with the contours, and the closer they are, the steeper the gradient. So as you can see over here, the land's quite steep over here, and same all around here. So we've got a dam here. So, and as you can see, this is a national park. So it's never going to get built out. You got a lot of catchment area over here from when it rains to come down into your dam over here, which is great. So using these contour maps is unreal. It saves you that sort of stuff. Now, what's also really good about this program, we'll get rid of the contour maps and we'll look up layers. So it can actually show you floods. I'll show you the other project I'm working on at the moment. So you can click on that there. It shows you bushfire. So in this situation, this is what council would consider a bushfire risk. And yeah, these get updated all the time. But on the records from a council, if you're looking to build or do a DA or whatever like that, consider this a really high risk bushfire area on this property, which is interesting because, yeah, none of this over here is sort of marked for bushfire risk. I'll actually show you this other property. Here we go. So this is a project that we're working on, and this one here is a project that what we're looking to do with this project here and we're still undecided whether we're going to take the project on or not. So this here is right in the middle of town, and I'll show you the flood with this one here. You can see, so we've got the contours. Let's look up the layers. Oh, info. So there was actually a huge flood here a while ago, and we went down, we checked out this site. It was spot on. So these have actually been updated, these programs, with all the different floods and things like that. So can I join the panel? Tell us more about what you mean about joining the panel. So yeah, so what's this program called? So it's actually called Can I Build? So it's actually subscription based, costs $2,500 a year to get access to it. We actually do offer a service where for your own individual property, or if you just want access to it limited time, we can give you an access actually to our program. So you can actually buy this and you can actually look at a few different properties yourself. So if you want more information about that, shoot an email to admin@theoffgridshop.com.au and we can give you access to the program. But so, yeah, so this here, and as you can see with this property, the contours are quite far away up here. Well, as you can see, like the yellow, they're really far away. So this is all nice and flat, gets a bit more gradient, and then comes right down here to a big flat land right down the water, and that's where the flood comes through. So our intention with this property here is what we're looking to do. And like I said, I actually really do enjoy being close to services and things like that. We want to help people find more blocks of land closer to services and do this. So a typical developer, now I'll sort of tell you this story. So a typical developer here would try and put as many keys as possible. It's how they think about it on this property here. So they want to fill it with houses, like all this stuff over here. You just look, the more they can fit in, bang, 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 done, done, done. That's what they want to do. We're looking at more unique properties like this here, where we can put maybe 4 to 6 dwellings on this here. What numbers really work? We want to make these more self-sufficient for their water and energy. The criteria that we're looking at is to make sure they're self-sufficient for at least 9 months of the year for energy and water. And if we do need to use town services for energy or water, they're there and they're available, we can use them. So this is a great example of a property that this land here really is not that usable. And most people think, oh, it's a flood, I don't want anything to do with it. And what we've considered with these blocks of land here, we can have an Airbnb in there as a part of the community. So the community can have an Airbnb there where they can rent it out, put a tiny house on wheels, because it doesn't flood there all the time and the land's usable. We can grow food crops down there. We have food forests and things like that. So we can turn this into a little mini off-grid community. And yeah, this is literally right in the main street of town. There's a showground. Here's High Street. This is all the businesses right over here. This is the CBD of this town. It's nice, some solar panels over there. So, here we go. Here's all the floods. If we zoom right out. So this is a major flood that happened in the mid-north coast, and you can actually see where all the flood water went. So it's a really good program for using like that. So you can see where floods are. That property actually also does have bushfire on it as well. And the other thing as well is a lot of the mid-north coast here in Australia has acidic soil. So you can see all the bushfire zones. So if you're looking to buy a property, like you're looking to go off grid, and what this is really powerful for and how it can really save you money, straight away you can see all the contours. They're really high quality images. There is another video on our YouTube channel, which basically shows you the difference between Google Maps. Near Maps is another one. Near Maps is a paid service, which is about $5,000 a year. Gives you really access to high quality maps. The problem I've found with Near Maps for myself personally, because doing solar over the years, we really have a really good quality image of the roof, that sort of stuff. Basically, if you travel down the east coast for about 40 k's from the sea inland, there were some really good images. And Casino in New South Wales here in Australia is a really good example of that there for Near Maps. It will literally halfway through the town get cut off because the plane wouldn't fly that there. Fly on the other side of the road, basically. So these houses, some of the houses will be cut straight in the middle, really good image on one side, terrible image on the other side. What I've found with this Can I Build program is the images are amazing. So on the other thing, we used Tannerfield as an example and showed Near Maps, Google Maps, and the Can I Build program, and it was a lot better, the image quality. So these guys actually access to some software, which Australia was LiDAR 3 years ago. and some really good image and footage on it, which is great. It actually does work all over the world, this imaging. Not all over the world. There is a few countries that we can't use and we can't do. So if you are from the States and things like that, it is a bit more expensive over there for that access to that sort of software. But as a part of our account, we can actually set you up as a sub account, get access to it, and you can do your own searches and things like that. So yeah, just let us know more about it if you want to know about that sort of stuff there. But yeah, using tools like this can really save you in an off-grid property. Now, I suppose for me is what has stopped me doing. I'll give you an example of this property here and why we're thinking twice about doing the project. So ticks all the boxes. We've got a really nice undulating block where we can use gravity with the water. You know, what we're thinking about here is actually catching all the water off the roof, having a tank down here. We can pump it back up. We actually put some dams and things like that as well, because down there in the creek in the water, we can actually put a dam. So that's going to be used to that land down there, run some food forests. But we can then pump the water back up the hill. Yeah, so just from looking at these maps, using the tool, we saw a lot of really good things. We understand a lot. We can see where the block's cheap. No one else wants it because it floods. Everyone's worried about the flood zone, but we can use it for that there. Now, one thing that this program did show me, and it did actually tick the box, and you know, my assumptions were right. I will show you something. Have a look at this. Now, if you look at this neighbor down here, all this equipment. So yeah, you can find out what time this photo was taken, what date and time this photo was taken. So I thought about this guy here, and I was like, well, you know what? There's a bit of junk laying around that street there. So when we got there to look at the property, not only now is it that house, and this guy has so many projects. This is like full now on the new image. It's crazy when you go down the street. It's every second house in this street looks like a wrecking yard. So it's one of those things that to think about and consider what that community is like and people moving in there and things like that. The reality is, you know, when we designed and we looked at this property, and from a development point of view, this project here, we can actually have a driveway come in here, and really you could never go up there and have to see any of that sort of mess. But you drive up this street, the whole street's full of wreckers and car yards and things like that. So yeah, we're still considering the project whether we're going to take it on or not and do it and get involved. But the idea for us, the intention of this project here, was to literally put 4 to 6 houses on there, make them self-sufficient for energy, chickens, water. One of the dwellings on the property there, we're going to have as a farm manager to manage the property. And so we're talking with someone that was actually a masseuse. They could actually run their business from home, plus manage the property. It's a bit of a rent exchange and things like that. So yeah, there's some interesting things we're looking at doing with this project here and making it work. So, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it was awesome. So yeah, we'll see. We'll consider this project, but yeah, our intention is to, with these developments and the permaculture villages, what we're calling them, with the permaculture villages, is that instead of being like a traditional developer and taking a block of land and putting as many townhouses as possible on these blocks of land, we want to make them more sustainable, more efficient, and do it more in town. Because I think people do really want to live these better choices and choose to live these lives. You know, it is a lot of hard work to go off grid in the middle of nowhere. And with some of the projects that we're actually working on, our intention is to do the mainframe design with these projects. So we come in, we do all the earthworks, all the water. We've got all that done. We've got a couple of basic designs, and we're going to sell off all the blocks individually as part of the communities. And then people can buy into these blocks, and we can actually, if you really wanted to, we could do you a turnkey off-grid property. So from, you know, helping buy the block of land, we'll have done that. We've designed it all, the water, the infrastructure, all the roads and access is already done. And then you get to buy your little block. And this block here, I'll go back to that one. I'll give you a bit of rundown and end this in like 3 minutes. So we're just going to quickly do this. Look at this one here. And I'll explain the design that we've actually done on this property. Now, this is already an existing community, and that we're ideally, it's a project we're working on. We get access to it. We get to take it over. Great. What we're doing with this community here, though, and what we're going to do is, you know, there are people that want to go live bush and have private. So we're going to do that as a part of this project. We'll have a few little houses around that are self-sufficient, off-grid, or by themselves. And this whole community is completely off-grid. What I'll talk about with the grid connected as a part of this, we're actually going to build as a part of this property. And depends on potentially where we put the houses. We actually put, a group of houses close to each other out there. So it's going to be more low cost that you can move to these rural off-grid properties and, live in a townhouse technically off-grid. It'll be shared services. So it'll be one big shared solar system, all the water, one shared septic system. It's one of the biggest problems with the septic systems is the cost. We did a community recently and, we're talking $20,000 to $30,000 just for a septic system for each individual house on the block. So, there's 10, it's almost $300,000 we're spending on a septic system there. Where the reality is, we had everyone a bit closer, we could probably have spent $50,000, $60,000 on a septic system and be more cost effective. And, we'd have more people involved in the community at a lower cost than, everyone spending $30,000 and having their own little house everywhere scattered around the block. So there's some of the things that we're thinking about and how we're using these programs, these communities building moving forward to make things more economical. And it's the same with the other place we're talking about in town. If you can build a whole heap of townhouses and get them close together, and put 6 on there instead of 12, the money you can save and what we looked at is the services, because with rainwater, I just use that example. We have a rainwater storage tank on there where we catch and harvest the water. We use all the water self-sufficient. We only actually need one connection, because the problem with everyone needs a connection, because when everyone turns a tap on, everyone needs all that water instantly, when they want it, because there's no storage on site. Where what we're doing with the rainwater in these communities, if we have one storage tank, where the water from the street just trickles into the big storage tank. So when people turn everything on demand, we're taking from our storage tank, which means we actually only require one access from the town. So we actually only need one water pipe main coming in. It's the same with electricity. They charge everyone per meter with electricity, per house and per townhouse on site, because everyone's pulling in the demand and needs to be monitored and everything. So the way we're thinking about it and designing these little villages in town and off grid, more in town when the grid's available, is we're going to have a little microgrid with batteries in there where everyone's going to use the batteries, and slowly over time, the system, overnight, if we need extra power, the batteries will slowly get charged for people. So we'll be able to do some smarts and things like that. So it's not this big, huge demand on the network, and that's going to allow us to have 1 meter. So here in New South Wales at the moment, some of the areas, it's $2 a day to stay connected to the grid. So, $2 a day, we're just going to call it close to $1,000 a year. If you've got 6 townhouses on there, that's $6,000 you're spending on services to be connected to the grid for everyone to have their own individual meter, where we can have 1 meter point connection. We slowly charge a bunch of batteries. And then over time, the amount of money people are going to save from that there, that's a savings over 10 years of $50,000 as a minimum. And those prices are only get higher and higher, those connection fees and things like that as time goes on. So something to think about and consider. So cool. Well, guys, I think I've answered everyone's questions. I think of them. Yep. 2 AC inputs. Yep. $220. Not much. Yep. Cool. Awesome. Guys, well, thank you. And if you haven't already, check out the offgridtribe.com. If you want to check out the podcast and stuff like that, go over and register. The Off-Grid Tribe podcast, it's free to register. If you do want to get part of our private community, there is a cost over there to do that. And until next week, stay energized.